Hi, I'm Katie, and this is the Free Art and Design School podcast, web series, whatever. I have yet another amazing guest if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Aria Analyse. I am a animation director with a specialization in 2D rigging for characters and assets, and I'm currently enrolled in my final year at CalArts
You did
in
it!
yeah in the grad experimental animation program. So very exciting.
It's crazy. I can't believe you're in your last year. I am
I
so
can't believe
excited for you.
it. Thank you very much.
Are you excited to work on your thesis film? Are you like jazzed or kind of freaked out?
I'm very excited. I'm very excited. I've been thinking about it for a long time. So now that we're actually getting into the thick of it and working on it, it's been such a fun time. And I'm really excited to actually get to campus and see what my cohort is doing because
Oh,
it's always nice when you can feed off of each other's energy. So I'm very excited.
oh my God. It's gonna be so cool. I thought you could talk a little bit about kind of your journey and how you got where you are and like all the work that you've done. It's kind of insane.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
was there anywhere specifically that you would want me to start? Because we can
Well,
go beginning, or we can go to.
I'm curious how you became an artist and specifically an animator, but also kind of your take on the different schools that you've been to, and then I'll ask more about your teaching later.
Okay. Well, I've always been a fan of art. I've always had a deep passion for art. Um, and ever since I was a kid, I always found myself drawing. I look up those YouTube tutorials, went through all the phases, the realism, the anime, all the phases, right? And then it wasn't until I got to high school that I actually started thinking about having a career in art. But it was really interesting because our high school, I'm originally from Illinois, and our high school didn't have a huge focus in other mediums outside of traditional art. So I was only really exposed to digital art, and then there was, traditional art, and then photography. So it wasn't until I got near my junior and senior year that I started thinking about other avenues to go. And I talked with some instructors and some teachers, and they were like, "Hey, have you ever thought about animation?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's an art form. I love animation. I grew up with so many cartoons. I think that would be really great." So my final 2 years started tailoring my art practice towards going to a school that offers animation, and I applied to a couple of schools, and I ended up going to the Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. So I did 5 years there. I got two BFA degrees, one in animation and one in illustration.
Wow.
Yeah, I graduated at the same
Crazy.
time in 2021. And then immediately after graduation, flew out to California, and I got accepted to CalArts on their graduate program for experimental animation. So yeah, it's been a wild time.
It's insane that you went through without a break given that COVID was happening. Like that's crazy.
Oh yeah, my final year was completely in lockdown. I was back in Illinois. I had my computer, I had my tablet, and I had a vision. And I had to complete two theses, so I was like, okay, let's take it a bite at a time. And luckily, I had a really great support system at home. My parents were very supportive. My older sister was also very supportive as well, and so I was able to, actually crack down and finish my studies. But it was weird because it was, because you're looking at all your friends, they're on Zoom on other different parts of the country, and you're just kind of in your room. Your bed is behind you. I still haven't left that mentality, of having the desk here, the bed behind you. But
Oh,
yeah, I definitely was a different mindset to be in, where you just are at home and you're working, and also trying to communicate with people. One of my most interesting experiences was my mentor for my thesis, for my animation thesis. He was really helpful in the sound process
Mm.
for my film, and that's what really actually got me interested into working more with sound. And it was a funny time because I'm like, how am I going to record dialogue
Oh
in
no.
Illinois and everybody else is in New York? So we were able to figure out a way to do it. It was really cool. I called into the studio and directed them that way, and then sent me the audio files, and then I sent them to my sound mixer, and then like
Wow.
and I learned a lot. Also, my last year, I was fortunate enough to be one of the ambassadors for Toon Boom Animation, so that was really fun. Like that was really incredible. But yeah, I always knew that and when I was in high school, I always knew that after I was done with undergrad, I wanted to jump to graduate school because I'm like I'm already in the mode of learning, so I just want to keep going, and then so I'm really happy that we're here at this point, and I'm almost done.
You are so amazingly talented, and you have so much positive energy, and like, we've been in a couple classes together, you always have incredible things to say. I'm First of all, I'm just, like, in awe of you. I didn't realize that you'd done 2 degrees at the same time during the peak of COVID. I'm curious, like, I assume your animation thesis was, like, a film. Like, what was the illustration thesis? Like, ho and how did you do all of that together? That's, like, unthinkable.
Well, it's actually a very funny story. It's actually a very funny story. Long story short, I accidentally applied to the wrong major at RIT. They had a program called 3D Digital Design, and I thought it was their animation program. And so
Mm.
I got in, I got a lovely scholarship. They're like, please come to this program. And I looked at my acceptance letter. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. Wait, I don't think this is the right major. And so I called them, and the school told me, hey, yeah, if you don't, we can submit your application to the major you intended, but if you don't get into that one, you can still come here for this. So I said, okay. So they submitted it. I didn't get into that major the first go around. So I came in, did a first year in 3D. It was very, very interesting time, but I realized that it wasn't my passion to be in
Yeah.
3D, to do 3D modeling. So I applied to transfer to the School of Animation, School of Film and Animation within the college, and they accepted me. But when I went to financial aid, I was like, hey, School of Film and Animation, their animation program is a mandatory 4 year. So no matter where you started, you would have to do four
Ugh.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I said, well, that's fine. I'll have to do an extra year, but what does this look like for my financial aid? And they were saying, yeah, as long as you're getting good grades, you're fine. It'll keep for the rest of your year. However, because it's within the same college, all your credits transferred over from your first major. So I was knocking out classes that, I would have to take. And then it got to a point they were doing my schedule, and I was talking with my advisor, and she was like, yeah, the thing is that when you get to your sophomore year in the major, your junior year in the major, um, you're not going to have enough classes to be a full-time student. So you're going to get your scholarship cut in half. And I was like, oh
Oh,
no, what do
no.
I do? So I was talking to, my family about it. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And something just popped up. What if I got another major? Because people were saying you could just take a bunch of, classes just to get the credits out of the way. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what if I took another major if I'm going to be here an extra year? And so I applied to their illustration program, got in, and yeah, so I was pretty much doing both at the same time. But because I knocked out a lot of credits my first year, it wasn't that intensive.
Mm.
Um, I I would I wouldn't recommend double majoring. um, I would say maybe minoring if you are doing the traditional 4 years. I was just a special case because it is a lot of work. It was a lot of work, and it was a lot of planning. It was a lot of going back and forth between my advisors, my professors, saying, hey, listen, this is my situation. How can I do this? And the way that I was able to do both theses and complete them was that I talked with the head of illustration. I said, hey, listen, this is my situation. My illustration thesis, which ended up being record design covers, and I
Ooh.
actually got them made into actual records as like a little memento. Um, And I said, listen, this is the deal. Is it okay if I start on this early? So then I can finish it early and spend the last semester working on finishing my film. And they gave me the green lit. So that's how I was able to juggle it. So, but it's a lot of prioritizing.
Gosh.
And if anything, if anybody's out there is thinking about double majoring, definitely talk to your advisor about it. Talk to financial aid about it if you are on financial aid. Talk to everybody about it before you do it, because it is a lot of logistics to deal with. But that's how I was able to do it.
Wow. So CalArts must be very easy to you. It's just you're just killing it.
It's a breather. I can tell. I mean, it's very much a nice sigh of relief. Very much a sigh of relief.
No one has been more chill about grad school than undergrad ever. So that's amazing. I assume part of the reason you wanted to do grad school right after undergrad is that you knew you wanted to teach. Is that
Mhm.
true? Can you talk about that? You got to teach this summer, which is amazing.
Yes, 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 yes. Aside from always loving art, I've always loved, helping people and teaching. I come from a family of educators, so teaching to me, I feel, is the best way for me to actually help people. And so I knew that if I was going to get my master's, I wanted it to have a teaching focus. And so a lot of my practice in tandem with improving in my own personal technical skills as well is trying to have more opportunities to teach. This summer, I worked with CalArts through their community arts program, and I was able to teach at the local library animation to students ages 11 to 17. So it was really great because this was my first actual hands-on experience. I've had teaching experience before, but this was the first time I was actually creating a curriculum and conducting a class environment and working with my two co-instructors, one of whom is in my cohort and another one is in the undergrad animation program. So that was really helpful. I was also talking in tandem with the graphic designers because our classes were at the same time in different spaces. So it was nice bouncing off the ideas of how to go about teaching class. And it was a very great experience. It was awesome. The students, it took them a while to really open up, but the students that we had were very talented. They were very engaged for the whole course. And, it really it's really satisfying teaching in any capacity. I also tutor, and teaching in any capacity, helping people, and you look at them and you say, hey, do you understand, or is this making sense? They're like, yeah, I feel so much better after talking to you, or this is the best class ever. It just cloud nine. I'm telling you,
Oh,
it it's like an adrenaline rush. So that's yeah. So getting my master's definitely was for me. I felt beneficial in helping me craft those uh teaching skills.
you're amazing. And I am so happy that you're a professor and that you're going to be a professor in the future and that you're going to kill it and just teach so many generations of students. Because part of it is like your personality and your intellect are just so wonderful. You are so bubbly. You were so engaging. And like, I think the first time you mentioned you were interested in teaching, I was like, oh, thank God. Like, you're so on it. I'm actually going to interview Yara soon, who's teaching now. And I was like, maybe I have hope for the future. Like a little bit of hope for the future if you guys are doing what you do. Um, I'm curious how you sort of in your mind balance like becoming a professor and having your animation career because I think like each one of our professors has probably a different relationship with like making films while still being a teacher. I'm sort of wondering what you think your ideal setup is going to be in the future.
That's a great question. Thank you. I feel for me, I always saw that I would get at least a decade of animation experience in some capacity, whether that's working on a traditional pipeline or that's just being in the animation sphere. Um, for about a decade, that's a very loose number, but a solid 10 is a nice, good number. So I always thought of it would be that I would work in the industry and then I would come back and teach, and as well as probably having a do freelancing or consulting or have a side gig so that I'm still current
Yeah.
in the industry, because I feel it's very important that you don't get rusty, and it's very easy to kind of just go off what you know and not really being up to date with how things are evolving and moving. So to me, I feel like it's important that even whether I do jump out the gate, I get a small time gig and then also in teaching twice, like, part time teaching, part time working, or full time teaching and then, working on the side, or working full time and then teaching later. Um, it's important to, always have your foot in the industry and
Yeah.
just kind of see what's happening and seeing how it's evolving and then applying it to uh, your work as well as your teaching. But I think it's all about gonna be about having balance. I think that's the key thing, having balance. And I've talked with some instructors who have recently graduated with their masters and they're still teaching, and they're talking about how it is definitely a mental shift from being a student to being out into the real world, and to make sure that you just make time to actually be creative and foster that creativity. So that's I'm trying to have that headspace going
Yeah.
into the workforce. So
That's really exciting. I have questions about that, but then I also have questions about your thesis film. So I'm trying to figure out, like, I have so many things. I could talk to you for hours on end. It's been way
hey,
too
I
long.
could talk for hours too, but hey, listen.
The ideal interviewee. Um, so I guess speaking of like making time for yourself and being creative, do you want to talk maybe spoilers, no spoilers about what your film is about this upcoming year, or maybe just your influences, like up to
Oh,
you to disclose whatever.
oh, sure. I'm an open book, honestly. I put all my films on Vimeo, no lock. Like honestly,
Oh,
like I I don't mind talking about it at all. My thesis is I'm a big fan of psychology, especially behavioral psychology, and I'm a huge fan of science fiction and Afrofuturism. So my film is going to be a exploration of thought and from a experimental animation kind of perspective, was as well as having heavy influences in um, Afrofuturist ideals and aesthetics and
mm,
science fiction ideals and aesthetics. It's going to be a hybrid between hand drawn and 2D cutout animation. Um, and it's also, I'm hope the plan is to have it be mixed in Dolby Atmos. So
ooh.
that will be really cool, and I'm really excited for it.
Wow. Oh my God. I'm so stoked. I can't wait to see it. That's crazy. Oh my God. I'm so excited for you. You're gonna have an insane year. Are you TAing at all or are you not?
Yes, I am.
Oh God, you're so busy.
It's good. It's fun busy. It's fun busy.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah, I guess I can ask you a little bit more about teaching. I've found that our generation, actually, I think you're even a little younger than I am, which is crazy because you're doing so much. Um, our generation sort of has a different approach to teaching than previous generations, partially because of being educated through the pandemic. We have sort of different social needs, different norms, different like understanding, and like the younger generations are all sort of like fried from, the incoming apocalypse.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of wondering if you have any sort of, I don't know, what you bring to your personal philosophy about teaching, given all of the educational experiences you've had up until this point, and how you approach being in the classroom.
um, I try to go about teaching with the idea that students are people, and really And what I mean by that is that um not being afraid to be uh honest and open and facilitate honest and open communication. Like I know that there has to be this balance between, instructor and student position, but if somebody has a question or something, not being like, and you don't know the answer, not being like it doesn't exist, like actually just being honest, like I don't know the answer, but let's try and find it out together, um, or let's, direct you in avenues to where we can figure out what this question is. And I believe also when it comes to teaching, just, trying to put yourself in the student's shoes. I mean, we were all students once, and maybe trying to like understand more about the generation that you're teaching, and also really not being so stuck in your ways, like what I was mentioning earlier with the whole like always trying to be in tune with what's happening currently. I
Yeah.
feel like when I was going through my undergraduate career, a lot of the instruction was focused on, you know, the the past. But no, not a lot of focus talking about future endeavors. So a lot of the endeavors are like, this is the traditional animation way of
Yeah.
animating. It's like, well, what if you want to be an independent animator? What if you want to work with installations? What if you want to work with um make your own studio? What if you want like what if you want to be a liaison for different animators? Like what if you want to do other things that are within animation but not necessarily the traditional, I want to be a storyboard artist, I want to be a character designer, I want to be a writer, what if there is different avenues? And it's really interesting, as we've gotten older, how much art has evolved, but especially animation and animation has evolved. And I think it's important to, just really, when you're teaching students, especially something like animation, to not be afraid to do your own research on new things that are emerging that maybe you didn't learn because it was after your time. um, and teaching them, showing them, hey, listen, like this is what is out there now. Like for me, this is what was out there, but for y'all have more opportunities. Here's what's out there. And also not being afraid to constantly be learning yourself, because your students are learning from you, but you can also learn from your students. So I am a firm believer that don't discount students.
Yeah. That's actually the reason one of the reasons I started this project is like the traditional method of like a classroom where one person has all the knowledge and is imparting it on everyone else is something that I felt was weird for art school. I mean, animation is a little more technical than certain art school classes, but like it seemed weird to me that it wasn't as like circular or holistic as like I imagined CalArts was when it was founded 50 years ago, and how it's always pitched as this like kooky experimental hippie school.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm really interested in like everyone's perspectives, and often in my classes I was learning more from my classmates' critique and like their kind of pitches and ideas than I was learning from the professors sometimes. Not always, obviously, the professors are brilliant, but most of our lectures were critique based. They weren't, one person getting up and like imparting their wisdom on everyone. So I appreciate that you have that sort of same viewpoint of like, the younger people are way more in tune with the goings on of the world because of social media, whether that's a good or a bad thing. But that's obviously going to influence culture, animation, design, all these other fields that we're a part of. Have you What kind of keeps you going? Because you have so much energy and you make so much work and like you have all these ideas and plans. Like, what do you find inspires you or like leads you to be the way you are?
I just love people. I just I love people. I love talk. I'm a very big people person. I talk with people, and I find that from talking with them and learning more about them, um, it just it's just so cool, like how different people are. I think that it's always interesting to see how people think opposed to how you think, and especially when it comes to the creative process, it's so cool, like looking at how people come up with these amazing ideas and, talking with them about their process or looking at their work and you're just thinking, wow, this is inspirational. Like, and it's so cool. Just I guess what gets me going is that it's just so cool to see how different we all are, but also how alike we all are,
That explains
Well,
the behavioral psychology interest too.
yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, I think we as people are fascinating. And I think it's always just so cool to see, our creative essence as a society, and see that in the older generation, see that in our generation, see that in the younger generation. It's really fascinating stuff. And it's just really awesome just to get to talk with people like and really see what their creative process is like. And just, it's great talking with people. Like,
That's one of the reasons, that's like one of the main reasons I really wanted to invite you on the show, because I think you're so brilliant and fun. I
oh,
think what it's true. What you were talking about really hit on, I think one of the benefits of the era we live in is that we have like 100 years of preserved cinema and animation where we can look at how things were done, and like actually animation is treated as something like precious that we care about and can talk about in an academic setting or a philosophical setting. That didn't always used to be the case. And I really obviously enjoyed being in animation history classes with you. And oh my God, just learning about how diverse experimental animation is incredible. I guess I'm curious why you chose an experimental animation route rather than a more character-oriented one, because you described yourself as like a 2D rigger, which is a very like technical component of animation. And I was just like curious what brought you to EA.
well, I did 4 years of being a traditional like character pipeline animator. And after understanding the process behind, industry animation, I just thought, well, if I want to go and teach, I know that there's other avenues of animation out there because there's animation, the medium, and then there's animation, the profession.
Mm.
And I really wanted to learn more about animation, the medium, because it wasn't until I got to my last year or so that I started meeting instructors that actually introduced me to the experimental animation program that they graduated from
Oh,
uh the master's program, and they were saying, yeah, you should apply, like this is what we're taught, and they actually brought some of those principles that we learned at Cal Arts into their teaching. So I was like, oh wow, like there's more short films, there's more independent works like that I had never seen before and learned from. And um when I was looking for grad schools, I was trying to find grad schools that had a nice animation focused curriculum to where not only I could improve in my technical capabilities, but also learn more about animation, um, and just all you could do with it. And so experimental animation was also piqued my interest because it was a lot more focus on not you only crafting what you wanted to get out of the experience, but also focus on classes where like our history for experimental animation class, I didn't know 90% of those films before coming into that class. I really was out of my element, and I was so wowed at just how many films that people have made of so many different beautiful animated works, and how they all kind of came together under the guise of using animation as a medium, not necessarily as animation on a, for entertainment, and the essence of like the public, for TV or for movies, but more so kind of just they wanted to animate something. They wanted to animate a film, something that was precious to them, and they just did it. And I think that's really, really beautiful. And so I was also really inspired to apply because one of my favorite animators, Steven Hillenberg, he graduated from my program. And, I was like, well, so this shows that not only do, more independent animators come through this program, but also, more industry animators have came through this program as well. So it was really intriguing to me. And I was happy that they gave me the yes. So, and I'm with a very lovely cohort. I'm very excited that I was, blessed with the opportunity to be with such an amazing people. And in my studies, it was incredible that I was able to learn more about animation as a medium and how it can be used in so many different aspects, so many different materials, and still be animation. So that going forward into teaching after I graduate, I have this knowledge that I can impart on the students. It's like, hey, listen, maybe you don't want to be a pipeline animator. That's okay. Here's what you can do for independent animation. Um, or here's some works that are more commercial that you might have seen before, but here are some works that you haven't seen before. And from being in this major, I mean, I've fallen in love with animation, the medium, again, because I there was a point in undergrad where I really thought that I wasn't cut out to be an animator. I didn't know how to do certain things within a pipeline process, and it was very difficult. I wasn't getting a lot of support. And I had a lot of pressure, like a lot of pressure on me. As well as, I think I was the only Black person in my class to graduate. I think, and it was a lot of trials and tribulations. But after spending my last year working on film that I still love, and to this day, and then, an illustration thesis that I still love to this day, and then going forward into my graduate studies and meeting different people, and really kind of exploring more of what I love about animation, taking classes to actually get back into loving animation, the medium. I think that's been the most beneficial thing. And now I'm super excited when I get out into the teaching sphere to be able to show students, like, hey, listen, like, here are some works that are not traditional, like pipeline animation oriented, but are just using animation, the medium, that you might find interesting. So having that extra experience has just been extremely beneficial.
Well, it's so interesting to hear you talk about EA in an art historic way, in a theoretical way, like almost as if somehow by the field being experimental, it's more in tune with its roots of like what is animation as a field and what does it mean to like explore different mediums and different modes of like storytelling, and like the it begs the question of what the point is of animation. And I've never thought of the distinction between more experimental and character work that way until you were just talking about it. I think that's really interesting, to kind of consider experimental animation more like fine art and less commercial, is really beautiful. And I think that's so wonderful that you are back in touch with your passion for it, because I think if you lost the passion for animation, it would be so depressing, because you are so on it. Like your comments in class are always, well, first of all, your laughter in class is always incredible. But just like I think another thing that I care about doing this project, this podcast, free art and design school thing, is like real school does burn people out, whether because it's lack of support, whether it's burnout, whether it's like actual systemic or institutional problems, lack of resources, all of these other things. And I personally felt I wouldn't do very well as a professor in an already existing institution, and that the internet might provide a better way to rectify some of those problems of access and accessibility, which is why I'm doing this. But I also think it's equally important to have people like you on the inside who are like, hey, we're in this system that has been created, and we're going to do our best and make sure that everyone is getting as best an education as possible. I'm sort of wondering what your perspective on that is in the last couple of minutes that we have.
Oh, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I really believe that there needs to be more access to arts education. It's very sad to see how much of it is behind a paywall. And I think it's amazing that you're doing this nonprofit. I mean, thank you so much for asking me to talk on it because it's amazing. We need more, free access to arts, because a lot of arts is already being defunded in schools across the country, and the whole AI situation,
Uh,
it's a scary time. So it's so important now more than ever that we have more access to art education, free art education, and so that people can actually get their hands dirty and not have to just be stuck with, oh yeah, intro to art. Like if they already have an arts
yeah.
background or they already kind of know what they want to do, like they can actually get more experience into what they have a passion for.
Yeah, and more theoretical too, because I think, like, I'm never gonna do a YouTube tutorial on how to use Photoshop. I'm not the right person for that. But having conversations with people like you who are so in tune with the field and, like, different layers of the field of animation and be able to, like, talk about it is really exciting. I'd love for you to figure out an essay or article or, like, a teaching topic you'd like to do for a video because, you are so inspiring, and I think you're exactly the kind of person who needs to be teaching is, like, someone who has the passion and dedication that you have and wants to see people succeed. Um, so thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's an